In the last 12,000 years of human civilization, every war, every famine, every plague combined, nothing has killed more people than 10 microscopic strings of protein that aren't even technically alive. Not armies, not earthquakes, not even climate. The 10 deadliest viruses in human history killed more human beings than every soldier who ever fell in combat, combined. And here's what nobody tells you: we haven't beaten most of them. Each of the 10 viruses on this list hijacked human cells with a precision that engineers still can't replicate. They rewrote DNA. They tricked immune systems that had millions of years of evolutionary experience. And a few of them, right now, as you watch this, are actively circulating in human populations. This is a story about scale, about how something 1,000 times smaller than a grain of sand brought entire civilizations to their knees, that scientists believe could, under the right conditions, kill more people in 6 months than World War II did in 6 years. A virus is not alive. It is a biological instruction manual that hijacks the living to print copies of itself. Quick question. If someone asked you right now to name the most deadly virus in history, what would you say? Ebola? HIV? COVID? Here's the brutal reality. Every single one of those answers, while terrifying in their own right, doesn't even break the top 3 on this list. In 1918, a single virus killed between 50 and 100 million people in under 2 years. That's more deaths than World War I, and it happened so fast that in some villages in Alaska, entire populations were dead before anyone had time to bury them. The 1918 Spanish flu, caused by an H1N1 influenza virus, is the benchmark against which every pandemic is measured. Dr. John Barry, whose 2004 book, The Great Influenza, is considered the definitive account, described scenes where healthy young adults would be dead within 24 hours of showing symptoms. Their lungs, he wrote, resembled those of someone who had drowned in water they hadn't touched. The Spanish flu's killing power came from a combination of factors that virologists still argue about today. The leading hypothesis, supported by research from the University of Arizona's Dr. Michael Waraby, is that the virus had an unusual ability to trigger a cytokine storm, essentially convincing your own immune system to attack your lungs as if they were the enemy. The healthier your immune system, the faster you died. Think of a cytokine storm like this. Imagine you call the fire department to handle a small kitchen fire, and they respond by bulldozing your entire house. That's what the 1918 flu did to the human immune system. And that counterintuitive biology, where a stronger immune response meant a faster death, is exactly why it killed so many young, healthy adults between the ages of 20 and 40. So if the Spanish flu is just one entry on this list, what does number 1 look like? Let's build the list, starting from number 10 and working toward the virus that has, so far, killed more human beings than any other pathogen in recorded history. These aren't ranked by how scary they look. They're ranked by confirmed human deaths, combined with their historical and ongoing impact on civilization. Hantavirus. Number 10 seems almost manageable until you understand it's carried by rodents on every populated continent and has no antiviral treatment. The hantavirus kills roughly 40% of people who develop full hemorrhagic fever, making it more lethal than Ebola when it fully activates. The reason it's number 10 and not higher is that it doesn't spread human to human efficiently. Dengue infects 400 million people every single year. That's not a historical number. That's happening right now while you're watching this. The World Health Organization classifies it as one of the top 10 global public health threats, and climate change is expanding the range of the Aedes mosquito that carries it. By 2080, according to research published in Nature Microbiology, Dengue could reach 60% of the world's population. Climate change isn't just warming the planet, it's expanding the habitat of the deadliest animals on Earth, mosquitoes. Marburg virus. Marburg is what Ebola's more dangerous cousin looks like. First identified in 1967 in Marburg, Germany, ironically in a lab importing African green monkeys for research, it causes massive internal hemorrhaging, with death rates reaching 88% in some outbreaks. To put that in perspective, if you sat in a room with 100 infected people and breathed the same air, statistically 88 of you would die. The room would need to be treated as a biohazard site. Rabies is one of the oldest viral killers known to humanity, documented in ancient Mesopotamian texts from 2000 BC, and it has a fatality rate, once symptoms appear, of essentially 100%, 0. It travels through peripheral nerves at about 12 to 24 millimeters per day, slow enough that post-exposure vaccines still work if administered quickly. But once it reaches your brain, it triggers a progressive neurological shutdown that science still cannot stop. Rabies has been killing humans for 4,000 years and still kills 59,000 people annually, almost entirely in regions without access to post-exposure vaccines. HIV doesn't kill you directly. It dismantles the immune system so methodically, so precisely, that your body loses the ability to fight off infections that a healthy person's immune system would destroy without effort. A common cold becomes pneumonia. A fungal infection becomes meningitis. HIV is, in the coldest mechanical sense, the most elegant piece of evolutionary engineering on this list, a virus so precisely adapted to human biology that it took science 12 years from discovery to develop the first effective drug. Influenza is the shapeshifter on this list. Unlike most viruses, it has a segmented genome, 8 separate RNA strands, which means when 2 influenza strains infect the same cell simultaneously, they can swap genetic segments like shuffling a deck of cards. The result can be a brand new virus that no human immune system has ever encountered. That genetic reshuffling is exactly how the 1918 pandemic started, and it can happen again. Ebola is terrifying, not because of how many people it's killed historically. It's actually lower than several viruses on this list, but because of how it kills. The hemorrhagic fever attacks nearly every organ simultaneously. Researchers at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases describe it as the virus taking the human body apart from the inside. What limits the death toll of Ebola is paradoxically how quickly it kills. It destroys its hosts too fast to spread widely. Here's what nobody asks about this list. Scientists spent decades assuming the most dangerous viruses were the ones they could see killing people. The hemorrhagic fevers, the respiratory pandemics, the ones that showed up in hospitals and triggered emergency protocols. But in 1979, in a WHO smallpox eradication lab in Birmingham, England, a medical photographer named Janet Parker died of smallpox. The world had been declared smallpox-free the year before. She had contracted it from a laboratory sample. And that incident revealed something that virology had fundamentally miscalculated. Smallpox killed between 300 and 500 million people in the 20th century alone, not in recorded history, just the 1900s. For comparison, World War I and II combined killed approximately 100 million. Smallpox killed 3 to 5 times more people, and it was doing this for 10,000 years before that. It is the only human disease to be completely eradicated through a global vaccination campaign coordinated by the WHO that took decades to execute. And yet, 2 samples of live smallpox virus still exist today, locked in BSL-4 laboratories in Atlanta and in Russia. The scientific community has been debating whether to destroy them since 1994. We eradicated smallpox from the planet, then kept 2 samples alive because scientists couldn't agree on whether destroying the last known copies was science's greatest achievement or its greatest mistake. Think about the last time you were sick, a cold, a stomach bug, maybe a fever. Your immune system filed that away. It remembers. Now here's what the measles virus does. It doesn't just make you sick, Research published in Science in 2019 by Dr. Michael Mina at Harvard showed that measles erases between 11 and 73% of your pre-existing immune memory. The virus essentially gives your immune system amnesia about every infection you've ever had. Number 1 isn't the virus you feared most. It's the one you almost certainly never thought of. Hepatitis B has infected 2 billion people since it first began spreading through human populations. 2 billion. That's 1 in every 3 human beings alive today. And it doesn't stop there. It has been estimated to be 50 to 100 times more transmissible than HIV. It can survive outside the human body on surfaces for 7 days. It silently destroys the liver over decades, causing cirrhosis and liver cancer, killing approximately 1 million people annually, a number that has barely changed despite the fact that a safe, effective vaccine has existed since 1981. Here is where the story turns. The same mRNA technology that produced COVID-19 vaccines in under a year, technology developed across decades of research at institutions including the University of Pennsylvania and BioNTech, is now being aimed directly at HIV, hepatitis B, and even cancer. AI systems from DeepMind and AlphaFold have already mapped the protein structures of most known viruses. The same viral machinery that these 10 pathogens use to hijack human cells may, within 20 years, be the mechanism by which we deliver targeted gene therapies directly to tumors. The same biological tools that viruses use to reprogram your cells are now being reverse-engineered to reprogram cancer. Every person alive on Earth today is, in some technical sense, a survivor. Your ancestors survived the Spanish flu, the Black Death, smallpox epidemics that wiped out 90% of some indigenous populations after European contact. They survived not because they were special, but because of luck, geography, immunity they didn't know they had, and the work of scientists whose names most of us will never learn. Every generation thinks it stands at the end of history. Every generation is wrong. We didn't outlast the deadliest viruses in history because we were stronger. We outlasted them because eventually we learned to understand them. And understanding anything that wants to kill you is the first act of survival. If the 10 deadliest viruses in history changed how you see the invisible world around you, wait until you see what scientists consider the most dangerous virus that hasn't fully emerged yet. It goes even deeper. Subscribe for more videos like this. It is free.